Hey, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to another Season 7 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today, I'm going to be covering mid lane Kassadin, the Voidwalker.
The balance of power must be preserved.
So why exactly would you want to play Kassadin? Well, first of all, he just got buffed in patch 7.7. His W's bug has been fixed, his E's cooldown has been lowered by 1 second, and his ultimate has a 10% higher AP ratio. He's of course also a champion with very high mobility. His ultimate can be used rather often as long as you have the mana and gives him a ton of mobility. It's basically a flash every 6 to 2 seconds. He also has a very strong late game because of this mobility and his very high burst damage. He also has built-in mana sustain from his W ability, which is fantastic because it will allow you to trade more often in the lane phase. He's of course got very good roams because of his high mobility and damage, and his Null Sphere is amazing in trades as long as you're against an AP champion because you get a shield that absorbs magic damage. Kassadin, however, is a very weak champion in the early game. You are a melee AP carry, so until you get that ultimate, you're not really going to be able to trade too effectively. When you do fall behind, you're also a rather weak champion. Since you have to get into melee range to pull off your full combo, if you're very squishy and behind, you're probably just going to end up dying really quickly. And finally, Kassadin is a very easy to gank champion before level 6. You'll have to be very careful early on in the lane phase and make sure you ward properly. Once you are level 6, as long as you're not using your ultimate like an idiot, it's really hard to gank you. For your masteries, you want to go 18 Ferocity and 12 Cunning, grabbing Deathfire Touch as your keystone mastery. You're not the best champion early on in trades, but whenever you do hit somebody with your Q ability, it will do pretty significant damage because of this keystone. For the rest of your masteries, you pretty much want to pump up your damage as much as possible while also getting a little bit of sustain in the Cunning side. Now you could always go for Thunderlord's Decree on Kassadin as well, but usually it's really hard to proc it early on in the game, and it's not going to be that great until mid and late game when you do have your ultimate. I personally definitely prefer Deathfire Touch. For my runes, I like to be pretty standard and get Magic Penetration Reds, Scaling Health Yellows, Magic Resist Blues, and Ability Power Quints. The ability power and the magic penetration is great on Kassadin because it will increase your harass and make last hitting a little bit easier if you do have to use abilities. Since Kassadin is really weak early on in the game as well, I like to go for that scaling health and the magic resist just to be a more durable champion. Since we only get 30% CDR from our items, you could go for cooldown reduction blues as well, but this is pretty damn risky because Kassadin, of course, as I've said a couple times already, is weak early on. For your first summoner spell, you'll want to grab Flash. Kassadin is a very gankable champion before level 6, and this can save you multiple times throughout a game. It's also great in offensive situations where you can't use your Rift Walk if you do need to close a gap to finish off a kill. You can then also combine it with your Rift Walk to close a very large gap. Teleport is then a really solid second summoner spell on Kassadin. You're usually going to get shoved under your tower and won't be able to get off a good recall, so this is great for getting back to lane. Of course, although you do have really good roams, this will also let you teleport gank other lanes if they do need help. If you're instead looking for some more kill pressure, you could always take Ignite. This is a great one to pick up if you are looking to get snowballing in that lane phase. Your passive is Void Stone, and this will help you survive through that lane phase. Kassadin is permanently ghosted and takes 15% reduced magic damage. So it's a really easy to understand passive, but for those of you that don't know, when you are ghosted, that basically just means you can move freely throughout minions and they won't block you. It's a pretty nice thing in the lane phase because you can freely move through those minions and last hit a lot easier. The reduced magic damage is definitely the best part of the passive though, because this can give us some nice survivability. We'll usually end up getting poked over and over and over again throughout that lane phase, and taking 15% less damage is a really nice thing. Your Q is Null Sphere, and this is fantastic in trades. When activated, Kassadin fires an orb of void energy at the target enemy, dealing magic damage and interrupting channeled abilities. The excess energy forms around Kassadin, granting him a shield that exclusively absorbs magic damage for 1.5 seconds. So this is a really solid ability because in the lane phase you can toss this out, hit the enemy with some nice damage, yet get a shield back and absorb their damage. You'll usually want about 3 points in this ability so you can effectively trade and then max your E afterwards. Basically, it's really simple to use this ability, you just want to toss it out whenever you can and try to absorb as much damage as possible with that shield. The mana cost is rather high, but you can use your activated W to get mana back. Your W ability is Netherblade, and it's great for last hitting and sustaining your mana. Passively, Kassadin's basic attacks deal 20 plus 10% AP bonus magic damage. When activated, Kassadin's next basic attack gains bonus range, deals increased bonus magic damage, and restores mana with the amount quintupled against champions. Netherblade also resets Kassadin's auto attack timer. So this is a really nice ability because usually you're going to be shoved under tower, and this bonus damage can help you last hit under that tower. Since you'll want to hit the enemy champion with your Q ability as much as possible to harass and get a shield, this will also help you sustain if you do activate your W. Try to hit the enemy champion with his ability if you can for that increased mana sustain, but if you can't, you can just use it on minions. Your E is Force Pulse, and this is your main source of AoE damage. Passively, Kassadin draws energy from spells cast in the vicinity, gaining a charge whenever a nearby champion, including himself, uses an ability, capping at 6. Upon reaching 6 charges, Kassadin gains the ability to cast Force Pulse. So, when activated, Kassadin emits a pulse of void energy, dealing magic damage to all enemies in a cone and slowing them for 1 second. So this is a really strong ability, and it is our main source of damage. It has the same AP ratio as our Q ability, but the cooldown is basically half. As long as you're quickly gaining charges, you can use this ability rather often and output a lot of AoE damage. Against AD champions, you may just want one single point in your Q ability, and then max this one first. In a normal matchup though, you'll want to go for 3 in your Q ability for that nice shield, and then max this one afterwards. Whenever you're engaging into an enemy champion, make sure you use this ability rather early so you can actually slow them to hold them in place. Your ultimate is Rift Walk, and this gives you some pretty nice damage and a ton of mobility. When activated, Kassadin blinks to the target location, dealing magic damage to all nearby enemies on arrival. Each subsequent Rift Walk within 15 seconds doubles its cost and increases its damage, stacking up to 4 times. So first, the main reason this is a really strong ability is the cooldown is only between 6 and 2 seconds, and it gives you a massive amount of mobility. This does, however, do a pretty decent amount of damage as well, because it has a 30% AP ratio and also uses 2% of your maximum mana as damage as well. If you can stack this 4 times, you're going to have a 70% AP ratio and 6% of your maximum mana as the damage. This is an absolute ton of damage, however, it will also cost you 800 mana. Now, because of the high mana cost here, and of course the maximum mana ratio as well, we do want to get a Rod of Ages early on, so we can actually have a pretty good mana pool. Primarily, you're just using this ability to jump on targets so you can quickly hit them with your E and W ability, and then follow up with your Q. For your skill order, you first want to put a point in your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then we'll want to focus on getting 3 points in our Q ability. We put the 3 points in the Q just to be a little bit stronger in the lane phase so we can actually trade effectively. We'll then, however, want to focus on maxing our E ability first because it does do a lot of AoE damage. You could always take just 1 point in your Q ability as well, and then max your E ability if you are against an AD champion. We then want to save our W ability for last, but make sure we take 1 point in it at level 2 so we can actually last hit and get our mana back so we can actually keep spamming our Q. For your main all-in combo, you'll first want to start by Rift Walking onto the enemy champion. As soon as you arrive, activate your W ability and hit them with the attack. You'll then want to activate your E ability to do a nice chunk of damage and slow the enemy champion, and then afterwards, hit them with your Q ability. This is pretty much all there is to Kassadin's all-in, and after this combo, you'll just want to use your abilities as they come off cooldown. One other combo would be combining your ultimate and your flash. This is a combo you're going to want to do if you're engaging from a very long distance and you want to get onto the enemy champion. All you have to do is use your ultimate, and during that animation, also cast your flash, and it will instantly close a large gap. This will also hit the enemy champion with your ultimate's damage, and then you can follow up with the rest of your abilities to go for an all-in. In the lane phase, you'll want to try and trade with the enemy mid laner using the damage and shield from your null sphere. You're really weak against most mid laners, so try to get this shield up whenever damage is about to come in. Next, you're going to want to make sure you grab Nether Blade at level 2. You're probably going to be shoved under your own tower, and this passive can help you last hit under it. If you're getting harassed a lot and get shoved out of lane, make sure you use your teleport to get back after you buy some item. At level 6, you can completely turn around a lot of the matchups. Use your Rift Walk to close a gap and use your all-in combo to completely destroy them. In teamfights, you're going to want to use your high mobility to get to the enemy backline. Now keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to one-shot their carries to get them out of the fight. By just seeing you on the side of them, they'll probably get zoned from the fight because they don't want to be anywhere near it and they don't want to get comboed. If you can though, get onto a really squishy target with your Rift Walk, then instantly hit them with Nether Blade, Force Pulse, and then your Null Sphere. This should be enough damage to insta-give a squishy target on the backline. If you're then getting focused, you'll be able to activate Zonias and then jump back out with a Rift Walk afterwards. Now let's look at some hard matchups, and first up is Talon. Talon is a really bursty champion that's going to bully the absolute shit out of you in the early game. Against him, you'll probably want to max your E ability and also make sure you rush his Zonias. If you don't have that early activation from the Zonias, he's going to be able to delete you throughout the mid game. Be very passive early on, and as soon as you have your ultimate, try to start roaming. Next here we have Corki, and although your shield will work on some of his damage, he's still part AD based and will still get through it. He then has a ton of burst damage, and if you go anywhere near the minions, he's going to take a lot of your health out. Against him, you're going to have to be very passive, and you're probably going to be missing a lot of CS, and you'll probably have to use your Q to get it. When you are finally level 6, then is the time to actually trade more aggressively with him, and you can always start roaming as well. Next here is Anivia, and it's a lot like facing a Corki. If you're trying to melee down the minions, her Q ability is going to be very easy to land, and then she's going to follow it up with an E ability, and you're going to lose half your frigging health. You're going to have to be very passive in this matchup and try to poke her as much as you can with your Q ability, but make sure you avoid hers. Once you are level 6, try to dodge her Q ability and then go for an all-in. Like usual, you always have the option of roaming. Last here is of course Ahri. Against her, yet again, you're going to lose really hard in the early game, and you have to play very passively until you're level 6. As soon as you are level 6, try to bait out her charm, and if it does miss, go for an all-in. You should easily out-trade her without charm. She still is really strong against you even when you are level 6, so if you need to, try to roam around the map and get some kills that way. Now let's look at your item build, which starts with either Dark Seal, Refillable Potion and a Warding Totem, or a Corrupting Potion and a Warding Totem. I usually like to go for the Dark Seal whenever I can, but if you're against a really hard matchup and you really need that extra sustain, then make sure you go for a Corrupting. For your core build, we have the Rod of Ages, Lichbane, and Azonias. Since we are mostly a melee champion, we want to be at least a little bit durable, and the Rod of Ages can help us accomplish this. It also gives us a nice mana pool, which works great with our ultimate, and of course that mana sustain from the Catalyst is also really nice. Then for the Lichbane, we take it mainly for its burst damage. After we jump on a target and activate our W and hit them, it's going to do a massive amount of damage, and even that alone can burst some champions. This also gives us 10% CDR and some nice mana, which works great on Kassadin. Since of course we're jumping into melee range, Azonias is a great way to survive if we do get caught out. This also gives us 10% CDR, which is really welcomed on Kassadin. For our boot options, we first have Ionian boots for 10% CDR, and Sork shoes. Both are fantastic choices, but I almost always go for Ionian boots because I really value that 10% CDR. For our item pool, we first have the Void Staff. Since Kassadin is an AP carry, he will rely on getting through magic resist if the enemy does build it, so a Void Staff is a fantastic item. If we want to maximize our ability power, we could of course go for a Rabadon's. If you want to do as much damage as possible, you're going to need to pick one up. If we're looking to add 10% CDR and some nice magic resist, you could get an Abyssal Scepter. It is a pretty solid item, but usually I won't pick it up too often unless I know I really need the magic resist. If you're somebody who really values cooldown reduction, then you could go for a Morellonomicon. It is one of my favorite items, but on Kassadin, honestly, you can't really fit it too well into your build. But regardless, if you're somebody that really cares about getting cooldown reduction capped, then you could fit it in somewhere if you tried. And last here, we do have the Magi's if we are snowballing in the game. If I started with a Corrupting Potion, I usually won't even bother, but if you did start with a Dark Seal, then it's a very viable buy. For my example full build though, I take the core build, add Ionian Boots, and then the Void Staff, and the Rabadon's Deathcap. You're going to be a very bursty champion with 30% CDR, a decent health pool, and the amazing defensive activation from the Zonias. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is everything I've got for mid lane Kassadin. Don't forget to check out the video description below for a link to all my social medias. I stream every night but Tuesday at 7 PM Eastern now, and of course that link is down there. As is my Discord server and my second YouTube channel. Also, if you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure you like and subscribe, but other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy it, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy, have a good day, and peace.